Hello, fight fans. Thanks for joining us at MMA Insider. Before we get rolling with today's news, show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing. Now let's uncover the latest happenings in MMA. Starting off, Dana White reacts to Jiří Procházka's witchcraft accusations towards Alex Pereira ahead of UFC 303. Moving on, Ian Garry accuses Michael Venom Page of attempting to spy on his fight camp ahead of UFC 303. Next, Alex Pereira gives chilling explanation for why he shaves his head before fights. Moving on, Ian Garry rejects potential fight with mentally unwell Shawn Strickland. Lastly, Conor McGregor is struggling with the thought of not fighting at UFC 303. UFC CEO Dana White has weighed in on Jiří Procházka's assessment that Alex Pereira is using sorcery and witchcraft to gain an unfair advantage. Procházka has the chance to attain revenge this Saturday at UFC 303 in Las Vegas. Just months after their vacant light heavyweight title fight at UFC 295, Procházka will get a second chance to dethrone Pereira's light heavyweight reign. In the lead up to UFC 303, Procházka has challenged Pereira not to use spiritual forces to enhance his preparation for UFC 303. Pereira issued a cold response to Procházka's claims. White, who has seen the twists and turns of the UFC firsthand since he purchased the promotion with the Fertitta brothers, feels Procházka's unorthodox takes help prove his authenticity. During a recent interview, Dana White reacted to some of Procházka's bizarre pre-UFC 303 claims. Here is what he said. "I love that though. When Jiří found out about the fight, apparently he goes into a shed for 3 days. No water, no food, no nothing. Prays, meditates, whatever he does. His coach went and banged on the door, told him this fight was available, and he said something to the effect of, 'If this is what the universe wants.' So he's that dude." So he sees him doing the shaman stuff, witchcraft, black magic. It's just another reason that this fight is so awesome. This is real. This isn't fabricated bullshit when someone wants to come out with a gimmicky wrestling type thing. This is who these two guys really are, man. This is what makes people really love the UFC. Procházka earned a second shot at Pereira on weeks' notice after a come-from-behind win over Aleksandar Rakic at UFC 300. In the main event, Pereira knocked out Jamal Hill in his first UFC light heavyweight title defense. Pereira earned the then-vacant UFC light heavyweight title by finishing Procházka in November. He's 3-0 at light heavyweight since making the full-time move up in weight. After weeks of uncertainty regarding UFC 303, Procházka and Pereira are ready to put it all on the line in Las Vegas. For White, the originality of both fighters makes one of the summer's biggest bouts special. UFC welterweight contender Ian Garry has accused Michael Venom Page of attempting to coerce one of his teammates into giving inside information. Garry and Page will open up the UFC 303 main card this Saturday in Las Vegas. The fight features two of the most intriguing contenders in the welterweight division in a high-stakes matchup for both fighters. Tensions are building between Garry and Page ahead of their octagon clash. Page, a former Bellator star, has taunted Garry throughout the build-up, even producing a rap song mocking the Irishman. Garry upped the tensions during the pre-fight press conference when he accused Page of attempting to cheat. During the UFC 303 pre-fight press conference, Garry openly accused Page of spying on his camp. Here is what he said. "Did you and your team offer thousands of dollars to get information in shootbox from my boys? Did you send someone a message and offer thousands of information and yet couldn't infiltrate the camp? You couldn't. The shootbox camp is too tight. Your jiu-jitsu coach offered money to one of my Brazilian friends and you got nothing. Saturday night, you're all I know is you and your jiu-jitsu coach are getting suspended for life." This is far from the first time that UFC fighters have accused one another of spying on fight camps. Ahead of his first UFC light heavyweight title defense, Jon Jones was accused of planting a spy in Quinton Rampage Jackson's camp ahead of UFC 135. UFC light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira always shaves his head before his fights, and there's a chilling explanation behind his pre-fight tradition. Pereira is arguably one of the most intimidating forces in UFC history. Just a handful of fights into his MMA career, he's won 2 UFC titles and made himself a global star. In between fight camps, Pereira usually grows out his hair when attending various UFC events and out in public. But during fight week, Pereira turns from a fun-loving man into a dangerous behemoth. Pereira's decision to shave his head before fights is a part of this character transition. During episode 4 of the UFC 303 Embedded series, Pereira explained why he shaves his head just hours before each UFC fight. Here is what he said. "With long hair, I look like a good guy. It doesn't work. I need to be ready for war." Pereira's path to becoming one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world was quick and unorthodox. Just 8 fights into his MMA career, he won the UFC middleweight title by defeating Israel Adesanya at UFC 281. Pereira became a 2-division UFC champion by finishing Procházka in November. Since then, he's headlined UFC 300 in a TKO win over former title holder Jamal Hill. Before making the full-time transition to MMA, Pereira was an unbeatable force in kickboxing. He defeated Adesanya twice in the ring and won multiple Glory kickboxing titles. As Pereira prepares for his latest UFC showdown, he's in full fight mode, and his intimidating aura will be on full display Saturday night. UFC welterweight contender Ian Garry feels it's best to leave Shawn Strickland alone. Ian Garry is set to return on the UFC 303 main card later this week. On Saturday night, Ian Garry is set for arguably the biggest test of his MMA career against Michael Venom Page. The British fighter debuted in the promotion earlier this year, scoring a lopsided decision win over Kevin Holland. However, Garry is confident that he can end the former Bellator star's hype train. In the event that the Irishman earns a win on Saturday, the sky is the limit for him. Depending on how things shake out at 170 pounds, it's not inconceivable that Ian Garry could fight for a title by the end of 2024. However, fans know one thing, it's that he has no interest in fighting Shawn Strickland right now. Shawn Strickland is fresh off his return at UFC 302 earlier this month, scoring a decision victory over Paulo Costa. While they're not in the same weight class, Shawn Strickland has taken aim at Ian Garry on several occasions. The former UFC middleweight champion has often attacked the Irishman on social media, as well as his wife. For his part, Ian Garry has talked a fair bit of trash back. However, the Irishman doesn't seem to really want to fight with Shawn Strickland right now anyway. Speaking in a recent interview, Ian Garry was asked about his rivalry with the middleweight. There, he showed little interest in a future fight against him. Here's what he said. "There's nothing that needs to be discussed when it comes to Shawn Strickland. We need to leave him be. Just let him go. I think he's mentally unwell and having a breakdown publicly. We need to just leave him be." Conor McGregor is struggling with the thought of not fighting at UFC 303. McGregor was set to return versus Michael Chandler in Saturday's main event at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, but withdrew earlier this month after suffering a broken pinky toe in training. McGregor has not competed since breaking his leg in a TKO loss to Dustin in July 2021. The UFC had to scramble to find a new main event, which is now a light heavyweight title fight rematch between champion Alex Pereira and Jiří Procházka. As the International Fight Week festivities continue to unfold, McGregor can't help but feel left out. Here is what he said. "I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't in deep pain right now watching Fight Week take place. Deep mental pain. Thank you for the messages of support and encouragement, my peers and fans." Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Your dedication and support fuel our passion to bring you the latest and greatest in the MMA world. If you enjoyed today's news, please give us a thumbs up and share it with fellow MMA fans. Remember to subscribe to stay in the loop with daily MMA updates. We've got a lot of exciting news, interviews, and analysis coming your way every single day. Your engagement helps us grow and serve the MMA community even better. Once again, thank you for being an integral part of our daily MMA journey.